48 hours ago, without realizing it, you crossed a threshold so severe, so quietly earth-shaking, that even the source paused, not to interfere, not to redirect your steps, not to offer protection or warning, but to observe, to witness, because what you were stepping into defied every projection written into the fabric of the unseen realms. It was not supposed to happen. It was not accounted for. It was not believed to be achievable by a human. Consciousness moving through an ordinary day, breathing, thinking, existing as if nothing extraordinary was unfolding. And yet in that precise window of time, something occurred that shattered an assumption held since the dawn of creation. You forced the adversary into submission. This is not symbolism. This is not dramatization. This is not language crafted to inflate your sense of importance. This is a direct disclosure of an event that took place beyond physical perception, while you remained unaware that your existence had become the focal point of a moment that will be examined by higher orders for centuries to come. What happened was not subtle. In the realm that overlaps this one, the ruler of resistance collapsed to his knees, not figuratively, not energetically, literally. He descended in front of witnesses, in front of those who command under him, in front of celestial observers who arrived, deliberately to confirm what they were seeing. He bent before you. Let that settle. Consider how unthinkable that is. Across 6 millennia of documented spiritual conflict, this entity has never lowered himself in submission to any being, not to those who healed the sick and raised the dead, not to those who surrendered their lives for truth, not to warriors whose names echo through sacred texts. Never once. His very exile began because he refused to bow when humanity was introduced into existence. When commanded to honor a form he judged beneath him, he rejected the order. He chose separation over obedience, dominion over darkness instead of service in light. That refusal became the cornerstone of his identity. And yet, 48 hours ago, that foundation fractured. He was not overpowered. No external force crushed him. No divine command compelled him. No threat cornered him. He knelt because he encountered a level of awareness he could not infiltrate, could not distort, could not understand. He encountered you. And when that moment unfolded, when the impossible became undeniable, a quiet realization rippled through every layer of reality. 3 words were spoken, not aloud but vibrationally, echoing through dimensions that do not measure time as we do. This was unforeseen. Stay present. Remain here. Because what is about to be unveiled, regarding the reason you became the first consciousness in thousands of years to trigger that level of surrender, will dismantle the image you hold of yourself. Remain until the end, because the sequence of choices you made, choices, the forces of opposition classified as unattainable, activated, responses within the higher realms that even the most ancient watchers did not anticipate witnessing, and what you confirmed about your true nature in doing so cannot be reversed. If something within you has shifted dramatically over the past days, if reality feels subtly but unmistakably altered, acknowledge it now. Write 777. This is your signal that you are prepared to understand why even the darkest intelligences were forced to publicly acknowledge what you carry. The one who opposes does not kneel. This is not a matter of arrogance. It is structural. It is embedded in his consciousness architecture. It defines his existence. When humanity was formed, and the command was issued for all celestial beings to honor this new expression of creation, he refused. He saw fragility. He saw limitation. He saw mortality. And he said no, not out of hatred, but because lowering himself before what he perceived as lesser violated his internal law of power. One ultimatum was given: honor this creation or depart. And he chose departure. 1/3 followed him. From that decision, an entire dominion was constructed, an empire rooted in distortion, suffering and manipulation, all because he would not bend. For 6,000 years, that refusal shaped every encounter, through wars unseen, through temptation and resistance, through confrontations with forces aligned with light. He would lose battles, retreat, recalibrate, but never submit. Even when defeated, his posture remained upright. Submission did not exist in his framework. Until now, until you entered the equation. What you must grasp is that attention had already been on you long before that moment. Not passive observation, active surveillance. Within the lower dimensions exists a system designed to identify human consciousness that displays destabilizing traits, patterns that disrupt established operations. Weeks ago, you triggered that system. Every command structure stopped. Focus shifted. You became a subject of priority. Think back. That night, that moment when a decision pressed against you with unbearable weight. You remember it. You cannot pretend otherwise. You were alone. Maybe still, maybe restless. Maybe staring into darkness while your thoughts raced. The choice before you offered no comfort. One option resolved everything immediately. It gave relief. It met a need you could no longer ignore. And while it wasn't criminal or overtly immoral, it felt misaligned at a fundamental level. The other option promised nothing but continued struggle, difficulty, loss, but it preserved something within you that you refused to sacrifice. You wrestled with it physically, emotionally, mentally. Every rational argument pushed you toward the easy resolution. No one would know. No one would be harmed. You deserved the relief. And still, something immovable within you would not yield. Hours passed. Consequences were calculated. Futures imagined. And finally, you chose the path that cost you. You chose coherence over comfort. You believed it was invisible. You believed it ended there. You were mistaken. That moment registered as a high-level anomaly, a classification reserved for consciousness that operates beyond self-preservation. Only a handful on the planet meet that criteria. And when you joined them, intervention protocols activated. Because such a consciousness cannot be ignored. It must be tested. And days later the test arrived. An opening, perfectly timed, precisely tailored, effortlessly accessible. It solved more than one problem at once. And it came with no resistance, no barriers, no demands. Almost as if it had been engineered for you. And that is where the watching intensified. All that was required was a simple agreement. One word, a quiet acceptance. There was no danger flashing red, no glaring warning sign demanding your attention. Just a subtle adjustment, a barely noticeable bend in your inner line. A compromise so small it almost felt imaginary. Nothing that would visibly harm anyone. Nothing that would keep you awake at night. At least, not in the way most people define guilt. The kind of choice nearly everyone makes without pausing to breathe. And you stood there, facing that flawless opening. You ran the numbers. You saw everything it would bring into your life. You knew, without exaggeration, that it answered prayers you had whispered in moments of exhaustion. You even began softening your resistance, telling yourself it was acceptable. This isn't really wrong. This is how the world works. I've endured enough. I'm allowed this. Yet when the moment arrived, when the word yes was waiting on your lips, something intervened. Not reasoning, not fear, not shame. Something older and deeper rose first. Your soul declined before your mind could conclude its argument, and you turned away. Perhaps you did so gently. Perhaps you smiled and expressed gratitude. Perhaps watching that door close felt like a physical ache in your chest. Perhaps you replayed the decision again and again afterward, wondering if you had sabotaged yourself. But you could not take it, because your values are etched so deeply within you that even desperation cannot erode them. At that exact instant, a disturbance rippled through the lower realms. An emergency assembly was called. The highest authorities of darkness were summoned without delay. Every ruling intelligence gathered, not out of curiosity, but concern. Your actions demanded examination. What you had just done shattered a model that had functioned flawlessly for thousands of years. You were presented with precisely what you needed, timed perfectly, priced at the lowest possible cost, and you still refused. According to every infernal projection, when the full account of your decision was presented, when it became undeniable that you had measured every benefit and still chosen, alignment over advantage, silence fell. Minutes passed without a word. One by one assessments were offered. Wealth could not move you. Urgency could not rush you. Pressure only anchored you more firmly. Pain did not weaken you. It refined you. The realization formed slowly but unmistakably. Every mechanism designed to compromise a human soul had been deployed, and none had succeeded. Yet what followed rewrote everything. Think back to that moment a week ago. The opening for retaliation, clean, precise, earned. Someone who wounded you stood exposed. You held knowledge, leverage, timing. A single action could have dismantled them completely. It would have been justified, applauded even. Few would have questioned it. You had every reason, every right, every opportunity. The universe itself seemed to place the scales in your hands, and still you let it pass. Not from fear, not from indifference, not even from forgiveness. You stepped away because something essential within you refuses to function through vengeance, even when vengeance wears the mask of justice. To the forces of darkness, this was catastrophic. Resentment is one of their most reliable instruments. Hurt people create more hurt. Pain reproduces itself endlessly. It is efficient, predictable, but you interrupted the cycle. You were wounded deeply, given the perfect chance to retaliate, and you chose peace over punishment. When you valued your inner stillness more than their downfall, panic spread. They understood something they had not anticipated. You are not merely resistant to corruption. You are not simply resilient. You heal. Your presence dissolves loops of suffering instead of extending them. Another convocation was called, larger than the first. Entire hierarchies assembled to witness the complete analysis of who you are. For a long stretch of time, no one spoke. What they saw should not coexist within a single being. You endure extreme hardship without fracturing. Your integrity cannot be purchased under any condition. Your compassion remains intact, even where wounds run deepest. Strength usually hardens. Principles often shatter under pressure. Compassion is assumed to be fragile. Yet in you, all three operate together seamlessly. When this convergence became undeniable, it was clear you were not functioning within ordinary human parameters. At that moment, defeat was acknowledged. And so, something unprecedented occurred. A direct approach was authorized, not through events, not through intermediaries, not through suggestion woven subtly into circumstance. Direct contact. Dark intelligences communicate as thoughts that feel personal, familiar, almost indistinguishable from your own, except for the weight they carry. Remember that thought from 48 hours ago. The one that arrived fully formed, calm, persuasive, offering resolution to everything in exchange. For one small act that contradicted your very essence, that thought was not yours. It was an invitation, an offer made as an equal, an acknowledgement of your strength, a recognition of your integrity, a proposal of partnership. No more choosing between what is right and what sustains you. No more sacrifice, only alignment on their terms. The offer was presented as empowerment, framed as permission rather than corruption. You were told you could reshape the world according to your own sense of justice. That influence would be placed in your hands if you simply accepted one premise, that there are moments when force must answer force. It was seductive in its precision, flawless in its logic. There was no demand that you abandon what you value, only a suggestion that sometimes flame is required to extinguish flame. The implication was subtle and clever, almost comforting. Remain pure, remain compassionate, remain untouched, while the necessary darkness is handled elsewhere. Let someone else carry the weight. Let someone else cross the line. It sounded balanced, even wise. And yet, what followed sent a tremor through realities that rarely react. Before thought could form, before reason could assemble its arguments, rejection surged through you. It did not arrive as analysis. It arrived as certainty. Your inner compass responded faster than cognition, faster than fear, faster than desire. The refusal emerged from a place beneath language. And in that instant, the one who made the offer understood something he had not anticipated. This was not a consciousness that could be persuaded, redirected, or slowly eroded. This was a being whose values were not beliefs, but architecture, embedded into the very structure of awareness. There was nothing to negotiate with. What he faced was alignment so complete that compromise could not even be considered. A decision confronted him then, one that gnawed at him relentlessly. He could persist, continue testing you, knowing that each failure weakened his authority in the eyes of those who followed him, or he could preserve his standing by doing something unthinkable, by openly acknowledging a presence he could not overcome. Hours passed in internal conflict. Angles were examined, scenarios replayed. Counsel was taken, and after extended deliberation, a conclusion was reached. Not merely to recognize you, but to enact a response reserved for encounters with superior force. There exists an ancient code governing such moments. In higher realms, respect is expressed through reverence. In lower realms, it manifests as submission. And 48 hours ago, within the layer of existence that overlaps your physical life, an act occurred that had never been recorded. He lowered himself before you. The gesture reverberated outward, rippling through every plane of existence. When the supreme authority of opposition kneels before a human soul, it signifies something beyond victory. It marks the recognition of a consciousness operating outside ordinary classifications of power. In that moment, you were acknowledged as untouchable territory. Witnesses stood frozen, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Murmurs spread, disbelief mingled with awe. Everything had changed, and at that precise convergence, observers arrived from above, because the entire process had been under watch. Intervention is rare. Growth is usually allowed to unfold without interference. But there are inflection points so extraordinary that they demand direct witnessing. When that knee touched the ground, a summons was issued. The highest guardians appeared, not to intervene, but to confirm. They looked upon what had occurred and recognized an achievement no collective force had managed before. Strength born not from domination, but from coherence. Integrity so complete that nothing could penetrate it. Compassion refined through pain into something transformative rather than fragile. True power revealed not in destruction, but in restraint. And then a declaration moved through every dimension, not loud but absolute. The essence has been proven. Activation authorized. 3 words that altered the trajectory of your existence. Long before this life, before time was experienced as you know it, you served within the celestial ranks. Not in a passive role, not as a watcher, but as one assigned to operations, requiring unwavering alignment under unbearable pressure. Missions where darkness is entered deliberately to retrieve what has been lost. Endeavors where a single deviation would result in collapse. You were chosen because your inner law could not be rewritten. Prolonged exposure to distortion could not alter it. Among the higher orders, you were known as incorruptible. There came a moment when mastery was achieved. Maintaining integrity while fully empowered, fully aware, fully protected had become natural. And a question emerged within you, not born of doubt but of curiosity. Would this integrity remain if memory were stripped away? If fear were real? If isolation were total? You volunteered for the ultimate examination, to incarnate, to forget, to enter vulnerability without the certainty of origin. To see whether essence survives the veil. And it did. You chose alignment without knowing why. You preserved principle without remembering its source. You selected compassion over retaliation without recalling your training. Your core remained intact while passing through complete amnesia of self. This is not growth. This is revelation. This is eternal nature expressing itself through temporary form. This is eternal nature expressing itself through temporary form. Now that the trial has concluded, restoration has begun. You may have already noticed fragments surfacing, dreams charged with unfamiliar battles, knowledge appearing fully formed without study, a sense of familiarity with things you have never encountered. These are not inventions. They are returns. When the directive was issued to activate fully, precise instructions followed. Limitations once placed to allow a genuine human experience are being lifted. Access to prior knowledge and capacities is being restored gradually, consciously. Energetic reconnection with others on similar missions within human form is underway. Support is being coordinated so function can proceed without obstruction. What unfolds next may appear miraculous or improbably fortunate, but it is neither chance nor fantasy. Circumstances will align because coordination is active. Financial pressures will ease through openings that arrive exactly when required, not randomly but deliberately positioned. Relationships that drain rather than nourish will dissolve quietly, without confrontation as resonance fades. Opportunities aligned with purpose will present themselves with a precision that defies coincidence. You will find yourself repeatedly in the correct place at the precise moment, encountering the exact individuals necessary for what follows. Beyond this, something subtler will emerge. Your mere presence will begin to awaken others, not through effort or instruction, but through proximity. Courage will ignite in those who cross your path. Resolve will strengthen. Dormant potential will stir. Conversations will catalyze decisions that alter trajectories. You will notice it happening without intention. This is transmission. This is frequency at work. You are no longer moving through isolated struggles. You have become a living catalyst, a mobile point of transformation. Your light does not announce itself, yet it cannot be concealed. The reason you entered this incarnation, the function you volunteered to fulfill, is now coming online consciously. You are part of a vast operation unfolding on the human plane, and your role within it is no longer dormant. A synchronized movement is unfolding, involving nearly 3,000 beings who carry the same inner signature you do. You're positioned deliberately across the globe, each one coming online at an exact moment that has been calculated, far beyond human awareness. On the surface, the purpose appears simple, almost understated, yet its depth is vast. The task is to stabilize and root an unbreakable frequency of integrity directly into the shared energetic field of humanity itself. Humanity now stands at a decisive threshold. As a collective, it can rise into a new stage of consciousness defined by coherence, compassion, mutual respect, and true cooperation. Or it can descend back into old cycles driven by fear, domination, suspicion, and fragmentation. The opposing forces are expending enormous effort to tip the balance toward corruption and division, saturating the world with anxiety, hostility, and mistrust. A fearful population is easy to steer. A divided society cannot unify. People who distrust one another never build anything lasting together. But when a critical number of souls live with unmistakable integrity, when strength and principle are visibly embodied in real life, corruption loses its persuasive power. Its narratives collapse. Your role is not to battle darkness head-on. It is not to confront entities or engage in spiritual combat. It is not to lecture, convince, or recruit. Your role is far quieter and far more potent. You are here to exist fully as yourself, aligned, incorruptible, resilient, compassionate. You are here to live your truth openly, without shrinking, without disguising it to fit expectations. Each time you make a principled choice where others can see it, something subtle but powerful occurs. You remind those around you that integrity is still possible. Each time you hold to what is right under visible pressure, you demonstrate that survival does not require betrayal. Each time you choose understanding over retaliation in situations where retaliation would be applauded, you reveal a different option, and the effect multiplies. One person shifts, then another. Integrity spreads not by force, but by resonance, cascading outward like falling dominoes. As this continues, you will begin to notice something forming organically. Others like you will appear, not through deliberate searching but through recognition. Incorruptible souls find one another naturally, drawn together by an energetic familiarity that requires no explanation. When this living network completes itself, when all 3,000 integrity carriers are active and aligned in their respective positions, the world alters at its foundation, not through chaos or overthrow, but through a silent recalibration where enough people simultaneously decide that alignment matters more than convenience. This is already understood by the adversarial forces. That is why submission occurred. The kneeling was not about you as an individual alone. It was recognition that you are embedded in a coordinated design that directly influences the future direction of human consciousness. You are not something that can be halted, corrupted, or meaningfully diverted. Observation is the only option left. Now you are seeing the full picture without distortion. What you call integrity is not a personality trait you developed through hardship in this lifetime. It is a warrior imprint you carried into incarnation. A moral structure so deeply seated that it survived complete amnesia of origin. When you express that alignment so consistently, so visibly, that even the highest force of opposition had to acknowledge it publicly, a higher protocol was initiated. Confirmed warriors transition into active catalysts. From this point forward, your life ceases to be a solitary struggle against isolated challenges. It becomes a conduit through which alignment spreads. Support flows in to sustain that function. Constraints that once felt immovable begin to dissolve. Financial pressures ease as new openings emerge. Relationships that drain rather than nourish quietly fall away. Opportunities aligned with your purpose arrive with uncanny precision, not by coincidence, but through deliberate coordination, carried out by higher intelligences, now authorized to assist. As you consciously embody your role, as you ground this frequency of incorruptible integrity into daily life, your influence amplifies rapidly. You will walk into spaces and feel the atmosphere shift. People around you will feel subtly encouraged to rise, to choose better versions of themselves without knowing why. Your presence becomes catalytic. What you transmit transcends logic and explanation. If you have reached this point and feel the pull to deepen your understanding of how to operate consciously as an incorruptible, celestial warrior, one whose alignment disrupted 6,000 years of established protocol, there is material available that supports this integration, accessible at a cost lower than an ordinary meal and accompanied by guided audio and brief meditative practices. If you sense that it is time to fully inhabit the identity you have already proven, the access point is waiting. And if you recognize within yourself that your integrity reshaped unseen hierarchies, and you are ready to stand openly as a catalyst for planetary transformation, mark it now. Write 777. Let that signal reinforce the field you are anchoring. Stay connected. Receive what continues to unfold. Share this message with others whose integrity seems almost unreal, because those carrying this frequency must find and strengthen one another. And before you go, follow the thread that is already opening, because what activates next will ensure you have everything required to complete what you chose long before this life began. Together, coherence becomes unstoppable.